Porsche Mission X, first revealed a few days ago at Porsche's big 75th anniversary bash at the museum in Zuffenhausen, now parked up in a shed somewhere near Paris so we can have a proper poke around it without all the crowds getting in the way. What is it? It's Porsche's vision of what an all-electric hypercar could look like. They haven't actually confirmed that they're going to build it, but trust me, they are, probably by about 2027. But before we get into the frankly outrageous performance targets for this thing, join me in the car park. Oh look, how handy. Parked just outside is the 959 Carrera GT and 918 Spyder, Porsche's Incredibles, and the bloodline of boundary-pushing hypercars that's led us to the Mission X's door. We start with the Porsche 959. In the mid-80s, the concept was first shown in 1983. This thing took the 911 template and then turned it into a rolling laboratory. So the panels are made from an aluminium Kevlar composite. It's got a 2.8 litre flat six with 444 horsepower. It's got some very trick suspension that's self-leveling, allows the aero to work properly, and it can split the torque between the front and rear axles. It's four-wheel drive, of course, and it can do nearly 200 miles an hour. Bill Gates has one of these apparently. Obviously, he likes all that computing power. Moving on to 2003, you'll notice that these come in neat 10-year intervals, and we meet the Carrera GT. Again, highly advanced, but in different ways. This one came with a carbon fibre monocoque. You've got a 5.7 litre naturally aspirated V10 with just over 600 horsepower that revs like a McLaren F1. It's got a manual gearbox. It famously has a very tricky ceramic clutch, but that's all made up for by the fact that you've got this gorgeous wooden gear lever in there mounted high on the centre console, about as aggressive as a mid-engine supercar gets. Moving on to 2013 and the Porsche 918 Spyder. Now, of the Holy Trinity, the three hybrid hypercars that came along at roughly the same time, the LaFerrari, the McLaren P1, and this is the most hybrid. It's the one that can run on e-power alone, but it's not soft because you've got a 4.6 litre naturally aspirated V8 and all those batteries and motors producing 875 brake horsepower in total. It's 10 years old, but it still looks fresh and it still feels forward thinking in terms of its technology. Right, that's the past then. Should we have a look at the future? If I'm honest, I was rather hoping Porsche was still going to find a way to cram a combustion engine into the Mission X, but no. They pretty much perfected hybrid with the 918, so now it's time for a new challenge. Time to see what pure electric can do. Firstly, the bad news. There is no official power figure for this car yet, only that Porsche wants a 1-to-1 power to weight ratio. So if they manage to hit 1500 kilograms and therefore 1500 horsepower, I'm going to be mightily impressed, but it's probably going to slip to around 1700, isn't it? Either way, they want this thing to be the fastest road car ever around the Nurburgring. The lap record at the moment stands at 6 minutes 35, set by the AMG 1, and realistically is probably going to tumble even further in the next 3 or 4 years while they develop this car. Performance figures, there aren't any, we're guessing, but over 200 miles an hour and 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds seems entirely reasonable. There's no word on battery size either, only that thanks to a new 900 volt architecture, it will accept charge at twice the rate of a Taycan Turbo S, so 500 kilowatt plus. And rather than a skateboard layout, the battery chest will be behind the seats to keep the seating position and roof low, and to keep the centre of mass in the middle of the car. They've also dropped some hints about the downforce, mainly that it will have lots. Well in excess, Porsche says, of the new GT3 RS, which is a bit of a downforce monster. It produces 860 kilograms at 177 miles an hour, and this is going to have more, which is very remarkable when you look at the rather clean silhouette of this car. There's no ironing board front splitter, there's not any huge swan neck rear wing at the back, which leads me to believe that there are some very clever things going on underneath the Mission X, suckering this thing down onto the road. If I'm being totally honest, I was a bit underwhelmed when I first saw pictures of the Mission X, possibly something to do with the distinctly brown rocket metallic paint, and then I started to appreciate just how mad the proportions are on this thing, and it started winning me over. So at 4.5 metres long and 2 metres wide, it's pretty much the same footprint as a 918 Spyder. In fact, it looks a fair bit smaller and more compact than I thought it was when I first saw those pictures. But the real trick here is when you look at it in profile, I thought this was a really cab forward stance. I just spoke to the exterior designer. He said, nah, your eyes are playing tricks on you. What's actually going on here is this roofline here falls away much quicker than it does in the 918 Spyder, giving the impression that this bubble canopy is further forward. And then there's the details. Starting here with the headlights, which are a new take on Porsche's classic 4-block lighting motif thing. And they also open like a pair of eyes when you switch the car on. I haven't seen it myself yet, but I'm told it's very fancy. Hopefully we can drop in an animation of that for you all to see. Come down the side, the wheels, so 20-inch at the front, 21-inch at the back. They're super lightweight, made from magnesium. And then we get to the really good stuff, the glass canopy up here. Well, it's almost all glass. There's this carbon fiber exoskeleton holding it all together, and the doors are really cool. Like the 917 Racer, and they pop up into your hand and take most of the roof with them. I've just got to close them now without upsetting anyone. I think we got away with that. Coming down the side of the car, you've got the rear view mirrors here, actually mounted on the rear quarters of the car. You've got a little cheetah sticker down here. I think they're suggesting that this car is quite quick. I don't really know. The charging port here. And if we come around the back, oh, there's aero fins on the rear wheel here to help expel the hot air, and only on the rear wheels. And look at what fun you can have when you don't have exhaust pipes to deal with. The way that this roofline just plummets away and tucks under this spoiler bridge here, and then you've got this floating full-width rear light bar mounted inside these fairly intricate little housings that I'm told are machined from a single billet, and a Eurotunnel-sized diffuser. Right, should we have a look inside? On the inside, it's like a Kinder Egg with brown and white chocolate living happily side by side. So, the lighter colour here on the steering wheel and on the seat behind me, that marks out the driver's territory. The brown stuff is for everyone else. And what's really interesting about this interior is the fact that, yes, it's highly digital. There are screens everywhere. You've got a curved screen, bit like you get in the Taycan with your instruments behind the wheel. You've got screens instead of wing mirrors. You've got screens instead of a rear view mirror. You've got the central screen here, and you've got the screen over here in front of the passenger. But what Porsche's doing is infusing all of that with analog elements. It's trying to keep analog alive, which I absolutely love. So you've got a big chunky switch here for switching the car on, even though you're not going to fire up an engine. It's something to do and twist and hold. And then this steering wheel, clearly inspired by motorsport in front of me. It's almost a yoke, not quite a yoke. We'll give Porsche the benefit of the doubt here. It's got physical switches all over it, and some of the most satisfying click to these paddles behind the wheel. But what are paddles doing in an electric car that only has a 1-speed gearbox? Well, apparently these two here adjust the brake bias, and on the left it adjusts the level of recuperation. Here on the central screen you've got physical switches that actually click along the edge of it here, and the screen that I mentioned in front of the passenger, that's a clock, so you can keep your lap times, but it's also got an analog clock as well. It does feel fantastic in here. It's super racy, as I said. The seats are part of the monocoque. You've got this motorsports inspired wheel in front of you. The glass just feels like it goes on forever. The visibility is insane, and yet it's beautifully done. There's a luxury to it. There's a quality of finish, and it smells, oh, let me tell you, it smells lovely in here. So how are we going to sum this thing up? Well, I think we need to split it into two parts. Things we know and things we don't know. The things we know is that this car is going to be mind-scramblingly fast. We also know it's going to have that repeatability of performance that Porsche is famous for, and that build quality that they do better than anyone else. We also know it's going to cost many millions of pounds when it's eventually finished. What we don't know is whether Porsche is going to be able to make a pure electric car as exciting as one with a petrol engine. And that's the real challenge.